Hey everyone, it is Sean and Dave here from Saturday Morning Cartoons. We want to thank the following people for going to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons and supporting our show. So a huge thank you to Derek Haynes,
Dr. Jason Woods,
Jamal Newman,
Melanie Harker,
Allison Keene,
the one and only Sean Paul Ellis,
and the amazing Dave Trumbore.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, it might sound kind of weird that we are thanking some familiar people and ourselves in this list, but we want to let you listeners out there know that we are not just asking you to support us through Patreon. We are actually putting our hard-earned dollars into the show as well. So we just want to say thank you to those who have supported, and for anyone who can't but would like to help out the show in some way, feel free to share our Patreon page within your social media circles. It would really help a lot.
So thank you guys. We appreciate you going to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons to sponsor and support our podcast. And now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from the nursery room, I'll be your co-host Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, and fresh from his afternoon nap, it's Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, Sean?
David, I'm doing well, buddy. How about yourself?
Sleepy little guy.
Oh man, I'm all tuckered out, but I'm just
little guy.
Just waking up right now, just kind of getting into discovering some old toys and some stuff.
Just rolling around there on the ground.
Yeah, just rolling around. Oh my God! Look,
you just bumped into somebody. Who is?
Yeah, I just bumped.
Who else is laying on the ground?
Hey guys, we have returning artist and friend of the show. We have Charlie Visconage coming back.
Hey.
That's how I wake up from my naps, like Fat Albert. Hey. Whenever I used to freak my
probably
nursery.
won't repeat that one again, but good to be here.
I used to freak out the daycare minders. They would roll me over and just be like, "All right, time to wake up." Hey. They did not like that.
God, that is so scary.
I'm gonna ask you guys this: Did you guys ever go to daycare? Were you ever in daycare?
Yes.
You were in daycare, Sean?
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me, did you guys have to do nap time? I'm like having weird like PTSD nap time flashbacks now.
In mine, no. It was more like after school and then some in the summer. But no, there was no enforced napping. If anything, there was enforced just like be outside for many hours.
What about you, Sean? Did you have enforced napping? I definitely did, and I hated it. Still do to this day.
I didn't have any forced napping. It was one of those things, again, sort of like what Charlie's saying. It was before school, after school, and then a lot during the summer. So it was a lot of the neighborhood and development that I grew up in had a lot of stay-at-home moms, which was great because then, we could go to different kids' friends' houses. Right. And like one parent would buy all the cereal for that week, or somebody would buy all the snacks for that week. And then that would be the place that we'd all congregate to watch like Ninja Turtles after school, or we'd watch James Bond Jr. in the morning before school.
Of all the things.
Yeah. So there was and then same thing for like you, it was always like, we had a really big area and everybody had bikes. So it was just, hey, go get into trouble somewhere.
But
that's not in the
house.
Yeah. Please.
Did you guys have, maybe I was the only one, did you have like those little mats that you had to roll out?
I had those in kindergarten.
When I was like real young. Yeah.
Yeah, like a pre-K or like a kindergarten class.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had the mats that you had to sleep on. And that's when we had like mandatory nap time in the middle of stuff. That always creeped me out. But it was only for like 1 year.
That is exactly where my brain was going back to when we were just talking about this stuff, though. Like watching these shows that we watched tonight, like that, I think was where I was stuck. Like my memory was just stuck in this like awful place of like enforced labor camp nap time, which I hated it. I still remember my fold up little like 1/4-inch foam mat with, it was like an American flag design. I hated the damn thing because I hated being forced to take naps. I still feel that way. Now
You're not a nap taker, are you?
I love taking naps on my time. I'm like a libertarian nap taker. Don't tell me when to take my naps. I'll tell you when I'm going to take
everybody should just take whatever naps they want.
That's right.
Can't have the nanny state telling you what to do.
Oh, nicely done.
I think that's what we're doing.
That's going to be the top of the show tonight. I don't know if I can top that. So we're talking nanny. We're talking babies. We're talking nap time. This is a weird segue. into Muppet Babies tonight, but there it is. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So why are we talking about Muppet Babies tonight? Who brought this weird suggestion up for us?
Well, Sean sent me an email and was like, come up with a show. And I've unsuccessfully pitched Porco Rosso, the Studio Ghibli movie, for the third time. And since that one didn't get chosen, we went with Muppet Babies.
It was a tough call for me personally, just because we haven't done a movie before. I was just like, I can't really start now with
Well,
Porco
it's major
Rosso.
cry fuel for me, so maybe another time.
Aww.
But I have very fond memories of Muppet Babies. And in fact, I was texting my brother. I was like, oh, do you remember? He's like, oh, yeah. And he even talked about one of the episodes that we're going to touch on tonight. And then my wife was like, oh, I might actually listen to the show this time. Because I was like, ooh, nice dig,
well,
baby.
If you made it this far, we appreciate you still listening to the actual portion of the show that's about to come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, as soon as I mentioned, I told Allison what we were going to be watching tonight. As soon as the word Muppet Baby was out of my mouth, she just started singing the theme song. So we'll talk about that in a second, but it's one of those that like really digs deep into your brain and just you cannot get rid of it. So for better or worse. But before we get into all that tonight, Sean's going to give us a little bit of the history on this show that you might not know.
Yeah, so Jim Henson's Muppet Babies, aka Muppet Babies, is an American animated television series that aired from 1984 to 1991 on CBS. Muppet Babies was produced by the Jim Henson Company and Marvel Productions. The rights are now held by the Walt Disney Company. So I'm going to try to figure out how they're going to work their way into Avengers Infinity War.
And Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. The idea of presenting the Muppets as children first appeared in a dream sequence in The Muppets Take Manhattan, released 2 months before Muppet Babies debuted, in which Miss Piggy imagined what it would be like if she and Kermit the Frog had grown up together.
Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know any of this like arranged stuff existed. I mean, I'm assuming it came up in the script writing process and somebody had the idea like that would make a cool like animated kid series. I had no clue that that's where like this iteration came from. What do you guys think of the idea of taking a property like the Muppets that had been around for years and then not just cartoonifying it, but like the baby version of it? Because we've seen that in recent years too, but like what are your thoughts on a baby version of something?
I think it's a little weird, but I like that it's not like Kermit's son.
Right.
I'm cool with it being younger. Like an execution where I don't think it worked, if you guys remember, is like the Flintstone Kids.
Oh God, yeah.
Where it's just like I don't give a shit about their children. Like the kids are not compelling characters.
Right.
So I think already compelling Muppets, if you buy that, then just as babies getting into hijinks with Star Wars and Indiana Jones clips, I'm all about.
That whole thing, I'd forgotten like all about that. And we'll talk about that in like the animation section, I guess, because it kind of plays in there. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
I definitely, I don't know. It's very weird because I think that this actually is a great tie-in. And doing research for tonight's show, I had read the part about Muppets Take Manhattan. And like you said, I had no idea. Right. I almost wanted to go back and I found the clip of, Miss Piggy imagining herself as a young kid and stuff like that. And so that makes sense. The crazy thing to think is that if this show came out in 1984, Jim Henson had no way of being able to say, would this work? Would this be something that's viable?
Or I would prefer that we don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's no market testing focus group behind this. It was just, you know what? That is a great idea. And I'm Jim Henson. So I'm just going to fucking make it.
Right.
And put this out there. And just like most things that Jim Henson has done, they're crazy fun. So I also feel like Muppets in and of itself, I know that, originally the variety show that they had was kind of targeted towards adults, but it was extremely accessible because of the very G-rated humor that it had for kids anyway. So I feel by extension of that G-rated accessibility for kids, that this feels like a logical next step, especially because if you're going with the variety show that I think had ended in the 80s as well, this would have been one of those things that it would have, if the Muppet show had continued, another generation of people would have come up watching Muppet Babies and been like, oh, I'm just going to seamlessly transition into this more adult appropriate show that's still very wholesome.
Right.
I think that's what continues. That's the thread for me between both of these, is just the wholesome kind of innocence and like sort of slapstick comedy for this. Always super enjoyable.
Let me ask you that then before we get into the synopsis of this cartoon in particular. Are you guys Muppets fans? Charlie?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think talking to the accessibility, they were like some of the first movies I can remember watching as kids. Like, so the live action one, like Muppets Take Manhattan, Great Muppet Caper with Charles Grodin in it.
Yeah.
Just Muppets Christmas Carol.
Enjoying all those. And I really love the Muppet area at former, or I guess it's now Hollywood Studios at Disney. Where they have the 3D Muppet show.
Yeah.
Was always super fun to go to.
And I apologize. The Muppet show, the variety show that they did on TV ended in 1981.
Okay.
Oh, so it was a couple of years.
This was like 3 years later. Yeah. They were like, we're gonna, because they had the show and then it spawned all of the movies. Right. And so this does feel to me like it was a natural, logical progression for this franchise.
That kind of makes sense. I'm an outlier here. I was not ever a huge Muppets fan. What? I was never a big fan of the Muppets. I was never a big fan of even Muppet Babies. I definitely watched it because it was just like a cartoon that was on, but always kind of with like a sneer, even when I was a little kid. like a 1-year-old sneer. Just, I don't know. It's just something about the humor and the characters never super appealed to me. I don't know what it was. Even to this day, just can't do it.
You just don't like really, really meta humor?
I mean, I don't know. I think that I do. I don't know. It's just something about the approach and the tone.
Yeah, I feel like...
I just don't like good things, essentially.
Oh,
well,
boy.
I feel like a not charitable view of the Muppets is just like dad jokes in puppet form and or animated puppet form.
See, but I wouldn't even I can see that. I could see why people wouldn't like it for that. Because some of this stuff is just like, oh God, it's just like eye rolling. But more in the Muppet Babies, I think, than the Muppets. The Muppets obviously had it was very smart. It was well written. The timing was exceptional. It just never kind of hit my funny bone. It's just one of those things that just never hit for me. And it's one of those shows I can sit there and I can appreciate it and just be like, that's a good joke. But it doesn't make me laugh. It makes me I understand this joke. Please give me the next one. It's a very robotic way of watching it. I just never get invested in it. Allison loves it. She loves all the Muppet stuff. So when the new one came on, last year, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Tina Fey produced. I wasn't super thrilled with it either. Did you guys watch the new one?
I didn't see that one. I saw the one before.
Another attempted reboot?
Well, I think it was the one with Tina Fey was the second one in that continuity.
But yeah, I don't know. So just keep that in mind, listeners, and you guys as well, as we go through our talk of Muppet Babies tonight, because that may color my commentary a little bit.
Should make for a good foil.
Yeah. And just direct all your barbs at me, because I'm the bad guy. It's totally fine. Another thing for you guys to keep in mind, and maybe our listeners out there as well, think of a property that you enjoy right now that you think a baby version of could work. Just keep that in mind for a little bit. We'll come back, remind me. We'll revisit that at the end of the show when we do our recommendations and stuff. Something you'd like to see. Something you'd like to see.
A couple good ideas.
You already got a couple. Let me get into the synopsis. Maybe we can pick up right from that after synopsis. So, if you've never seen Muppet Babies, the show portrays childhood versions of the Muppets living together in a nursery under the care of a nanny who appears in almost every episode, but her face is never visible. So you only ever see from the knee down, you see her stockings and her shoes. That's about it. And like Charlie mentioned, these are not the kids of the Muppets that you know and love. They are the smaller childhood versions of them. Same exact Muppets. The central idea of each episode is the power of imagination. The baby's imaginary games transition from the nursery into scenes that become quote-unquote real to the babies. These fantasies are filled with footage from movies like Star Wars, Ghostbusters, and Indiana Jones. Each episode contains a related musical number as well. When the pretend game becomes too perilous, or they get interrupted by Nanny delivering fruit or something like that, the scene dissolves and they find themselves in a nursery once more. Nanny is the voice of reason, congratulating them on their creativity or soothing their fears. So I think that's a pretty good synopsis for what the Muppet Babies is about, because it has that kind of variety show feel that the Muppets had, just for little kids, and just contained in a weird imagination filled just nursery room. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. And I know that Charlie and I watched this show. I know that you watched it with a sneer, Dave. But the number of references that are in this is almost overwhelming it was almost overwhelming at a point. And I'm an adult, and I can't imagine having watched this as a kid. And just I think that I must have just been like, wow, there's just so much color. And they keep jumping around all the time.
Maybe that's why I didn't like it as a kid, because I was just like, there's a lot of words and I'm not getting a lot of this stuff, and I'm really frustrated.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, I can't imagine having a frame of reference for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I'm also nervous.
No, definitely not.
And
I loved
those
it as an
kids
adult.
watched that movie. Yeah. I'm also nervous that those kids watched that movie and understood some of the portions of it enough that they could like jump into a version that's like right before the Kalima.
Well, now, wasn't that one of the movies that like forced the PG-13 rating, or like they were going to give it an R, but then Spielberg was just like, no, we're going to create a new rating for it, and it's going to be PG-13, and we're going to stick with that. Yeah. Something to that effect. There's a lot of like weird kind of studio-related incestuous stuff when it comes to what they decide to put in this show and what they leave out, because there's like really old. I don't want to get into that now. We'll get into that in animation. Let's jump to the theme song first, because like I said, one of the most recognizable theme songs out there. So Charlie, what are your thoughts on the theme song?
I really, I enjoyed it, but then when I was catching up on it today, it was like the moment it hit, I was like, oh, yep, this is somewhere like deep back in my brain.
Yeah.
And now it will never leave me.
Nope. It's in there. It's got its hooks in it.
Yeah. I still found it very enjoyable. And I think that that's one thing, even with newer prestige television, it's just like, oh man, you kind of, like, a good theme song works. Like, people put a lot of time into this, even though it's sort of for a silly thing.
I definitely thought that this was a complete earworm. I'm in the same boat as you and Allison Keen. The second I began to think about this, I immediately snapped into my Kermit, where I was like, when the world looks kind of weird and you wish that you weren't there. Love the fact that parts of it are sung by different characters as it sort of goes around, and it sort of gives you that exposure to the cast of characters.
Yeah.
It's fun. I love this sort of like crooning that's sort of at the end, or the crescendo, like when they layer Muppet Babies like on top of each other towards the end. I always wonder what they're saying in that, because they're like Muppet, 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 babies, babies, babies.
Yeah, there's
and
some soprano in there that just gets lost.
I always thought they're saying dreams do come true.
That sounds
and
nice.
I'm like,
I like that.
I'm like,
it sort of fits thematically.
Yeah,
let's go with
what
that.
a nice thing to kind of lead in with. So I love this theme song.
Yeah, I think it's like musically, it's kind of amazing, because they like right out of the gates hit that like super high like soprano note from like the people singing just Muppet Babies. They just like boom, that's the first thing that hits you. So it kind of just grabs your attention, and then that sort of falls into the background. And then Sean, like you said, great point, where the character voices actually get to sing as their characters, and it is a great roll call as you kind of go down. Because like imagine if you'd watched Muppets for years, the puppet versions, right, the adult versions, and then you were like, what is this thing, Muppet Babies? Is my kid gonna be okay watching this? And then the first thing you see is like all these cute little like kid versions, and you're just like, oh, there's Kermit, oh, there's Piggy, oh, there's Rolf, and look at Animal. It's like, that's a cool kind of like connection for me. It's a really good roll call. You don't have to like say their names because you already know who they are, but you also get an introduction to their voices too. And it was really cool. And that thing is never coming out of my brain unless I get a lobotomy or something, because that's stuck in there forever.
Or concussion.
Yeah, if the Muppet Baby section of my brain gets concussed, then maybe it'll leave, and then I'll enjoy it because I'll get to watch it again and learn it all over again. But but no, it's good.
But he'll
good
still sneer.
I still will.
Like, this sucks.
And if I'm that concussed, I probably still won't get all the references. So.
Right, yeah.
But why do I feel like this is gonna turn into one of those things where it's like open brain surgery, where it's like Dave has like the map or like the mask over top of his face, and they're operating him, but they're watching episodes on YouTube of Muppet Babies, and they're like, if I poke here, do you enjoy this more or less? And he's like,
still less,
still sneering. I don't know, bud. Yeah, that's
the face is just
the visual gags don't work real well for the audio podcast. I apologize.
No. It was great though.
Thank you. Since we were talking about all the references, most of them, a lot of them are written in the jokes, but a lot of them come from the visual references, and they are so fast. So let's get into, first we'll talk animation style of the actual like Muppet Baby characters, and then we'll talk about this whole other thing that's kind of folded into this cartoon in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before outside of Muppet Babies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this style. So I was reading a little bit on the Wikipedia. I mean, this is pretty common where I think they wrote the scripts and then sent them overseas to, I think, a Japanese and then a Korean animation house. Like they switched between seasons 4 and 5, I want to say.
Okay.
So they're definitely like very cutesy looking, but super recognizable as all of the characters. Miss Piggy has shorter hair, so you know that she hasn't aged that much. But they have diapers,
right,
which seemingly never used.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a little bit. I mean, like sloppy is not quite the word I want to get to, but it's not that sharp.
Yeah, it's
like,
not.
It sort
not
of looks
quite as
almost
tight
like
as it could be.
Vaselined over.
Yeah.
But I don't mind it. It just seems like it was produced like pretty quickly because they have to crank out 50 or however many.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you that it seems like the quality, I think for something as recognizable as the Muppets, you don't have to really try so hard. And that definitely came through in the animation style.
Yeah.
I will say the one thing that I really did enjoy about this is just the bright colors on all the characters. Each one of these characters had maybe like usually about three or
max.
4 like really, really bold colors. So like with Miss Piggy, you had like a really bright white, the pink. You had like, I think her eyes were blue.
And her yellow hair.
And her
blonde
yellow
hair,
hair, that like yellow like tuft of curly hair that was there. For Kermit, you know, you had blue, you had white, green, and then like the almost like unmistakable like sort of red inside of his mouth whenever he opened, like, you know, which I had a Kermit puppet when I was a kid, and so that was like my favorite part was like, you know, when Kermit would open his mouth on the show and would just like move his head back and forth like real crazy. You know, and that was for me, that was like always a joy, was to just like hold the hands up and then just make him like shake around really quick. It's probably why I found him only a couple months ago and he was mostly broken. So I was like, maybe I should have toned it down a notch when I was 7 years old.
That made me sneer a little bit. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Oh boy, not winning Dave over on this one.
You felt it.
Not with that one.
But yeah, I love the use of colors for the specific characters, because then the backgrounds would end up kind of being really kind of drab in many cases. And that was sort of when we had an episode tonight where they left the nursery where everything was kind of dark.
Yeah.
But when they're in the nursery, even then, there's times when things are like really kind of dark, despite the fact that there just seems to be a giant nursery that gets a lot of natural sunlight, but for some reason, they cannot figure out how to illuminate just basic things in here.
I'll tell you what I like about that, though. I like how it's shot from that perspective, right? Because these are just like little babies, like maybe a foot tall. I've got a lot of like questions about the biology of these things. It's either a giant frog, a tiny pig. I don't know what is going on with all these animals, and why is she looking after all these like barnyard animals to begin with anyway? But maybe those are questions.
Nuclear holocaust,
so?
And they're all locked in there.
They never leave the house, so that's quite possible.
Right?
Yeah.
She's just like, they can never know the truth.
Oh my God, it's like Fallout 5 or something. I don't know what.
Yeah. I feel like this is really, we almost have to have a separate section of the show tonight that's just called questions. Because I've written down like 5 or 6 questions about this show that I feel like I could pose them to each one of us and we'd all have wildly different
and
answers.
I don't think there is any real answer. But to that point, I just like the fact that they kind of had that perspective from like the ground level. Like the only other show that I can think of that really did that well was Rugrats. Rugrats, you would actually get like a crawling perspective. You would kind of, everything was from the floor up. So you'd be like looking at the couch from the floor up. And it's just, for us, obviously walking around, I don't know how often you guys crawl around on your own floor, but you often.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, so I don't get to see that perspective very often, but you guys do. So it was
got
cool.
to come down.
I think I might just like do the worm, just like through the house and see what things look like. But I appreciated that. I thought that was pretty neat. But we definitely need to talk about these stock footage clips and homages that are introduced here, because what is going on with that? So yeah, walk us through like the explanation of it. Like what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I mean, in any given episode, there are clips from recognizable movies. So I mean, Indiana Jones and Star Wars being chief among them, but then also all sorts of weird old stock footage, like trains, sort of like Western scenes, certainly more stuff than that. And then sometimes there'll be, I think in the Indiana Jones one, they sort of like pop out into a freeze frame of one, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah.
And definitely a lot of that footage in the news episode. I mean, it's kind of cool in a way. In another way, it just seems like, oh, okay, we can use up a couple seconds with this stock footage. But my crackpot theory is, I think at one time CBS Video distributed Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And even in 1984, when it started, I mean, through the early 90s, these were not sort of the hot properties money-wise that they are today necessarily. They were definitely targeting, people like ourselves. But it wasn't like something your mom or girlfriend would necessarily be into as well.
Yeah.
So say all that to say that it was probably very cheap to license those images is my guess.
No, I mean, I would agree. I think we talked about sort of the quality of the animation and how it's okay.
Yeah, it's a little rough.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough, and it seems like it was hastily made at certain portions. And to kind of piggyback off of that, it also seems like to have these weird interstitials where they're pulling in, was it like a 1920s like vaudeville dance act,
right?
And you're like, whoa! It really felt like they were, hey, let's concentrate on drawing poorly, and in the meantime, we're also going to cut in a bunch of these random clips for just other things for no reason,
right?
And just have them react to it. With all of these interstitials that they have that are included, and all of these reactions that we have from all these different characters, I think the characters obviously are what are so important in this cartoon. Like, if you had anything else, and if this was babies of something else, it would not have been.
Yeah, it totally wouldn't work.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. But because we know Muppets, and because we're familiar, and because from Muppets Take Manhattan, we had sort of that lead in for this. These characters. So let's talk about them quickly.
Sure.
Did you have some favorites?
I think I really liked Rolf. Number one, I think this is an episode full of Charlie crackpot theories, but his voice actor or actress sounded so much to me like Nelson from The Simpsons.
A little bit, yeah.
Hope it's the same person. If you, sir or ma'am, want to come forward and identify yourself, just tweet at Saturday Morning Cartoons. I don't know. I just liked his voice. And I don't know. I've always had a soft spot for Fozzie because I love his sort of dopey humor and general obliviousness.
Yeah.
And I think that still works. I mean, it certainly works for like 4-year-olds who watch this.
Yeah.
But it was still like, I couldn't help but smile.
Yeah. I mean, there were characters like when we saw Gonzo in this. Gonzo was always one of my favorite characters. So was Fozzie Bear.
Yeah.
And just Gonzo with his obsession with different chickens, and was it Camilla?
Yeah.
The particular chicken that he has that's on the show often. And so it was one of those things where all of these things felt very accessible. They felt very familiar. You weren't going out on a limb for any of these characters. Kermit is still the same green frog that he always was.
Sort of a rule follower.
Exactly. And Miss Piggy has the same sort of attitude that she has, that we've all come to know and love, and a certain assertive bossiness, which is fantastic.
Which seems to turn on many of hers. So, I mean, Gonzo is also like attracted to her.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's like canonical. Maybe he grew out of it.
It's just it's very bizarre that they would pick up on this, even in an episode that we watched tonight, where there's a nursery love triangle.
Yeah.
That seems very interesting. But some of the other characters that we've had that we didn't mention are Animal. We have Animal, who's I want to say younger than all of the other kids. He's more of the baby of the group.
Or developmentally,
He's working. He's working on some things. And then we also have Scooter and Skeeter.
Yeah.
Now,
so I think Skeeter is a unique to this show character.
I think, yes.
Is that right? Because Scooter is in the...
Scooter is the sort of the bird-looking kind of character.
Right.
and Scooter is he's a male. He's got like very the hair kind of looks like worms on top of his head.
Like coral.
Yeah, like orange worm coral, but sort of like a yellowish bird kind of body. And so Scooter has been in a lot of the stuff. He wears glasses, and there's always that comical joke where he lifts up his glasses and it reveals that his eyes are just kind of like very like
little dots,
like little tiny teeny dots. But when he puts his glasses down, they're obviously magnified, giant Coke bottle lenses. So we have him. So Skeeter is his twin sister. And in some of the stuff that I was reading for tonight, you're right that Skeeter is a unique character to this show, mainly because they wanted to add another female character into the nursery so it wasn't a total sausage fest of a show, which is
pretty
hard.
Forward thinking.
Yeah, right? But it's crazy to think to me that like they would have even thought, hey, let's add a new character and then let's never bring her into a movie or any of the additional continuity. They've had many, many opportunities to be able to add her into something, and she has just always remained elusive. It's as if they finished their time in the nursery, graduated to whatever was next, presumably just directly into the Muppet Show, and then she was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
She had a really bad audition for the Muppet Show. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, Skeeter. My terrible Kermit. She didn't make the cut.
I'm real sorry, Skeeter. I just don't think you're gonna cut it. You get your bags and get the hell out of here.
Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's interesting that they would have that kind of a character for this show. Now, I remember them bringing in other characters at different points. I remember Bunsen and Beaker coming on the show as sort of coming from another family that they were dropped off into the nursery and that they would spend some time, but then inevitably at the end of the episode they would disappear. It was kind of inconsistent as to who the parents were, which is the theme for this entire show to begin with.
Right, yeah, they're all parentless as far as we know.
So we have the characters. Anybody else character-wise that you can think of?
Not really. I think you're hitting kind of all the major. Well, I mean, Nanny. I guess we'd be remiss to not mention Nanny, who, as Dave said, you can only see sort of from the hem of her skirt down who is their loving caretaker, and she militantly forces them to nap, but does it in a loving way.
I'm going to be honest, she seems like a really kind of crappy caretaker.
Well, she's always just like watching TV and it's like, hey guys, when I'm done watching my stories, then I'll help you out.
That actually really hit home for me because growing up in high school, in middle school and high school, there was a show every Friday night that came on at I think it was 10 o'clock. And it was Barbara Walters with 2020.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Mom. I apologize in advance. But every time I would have to, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to go out or I'm going to go meet up with some friends. Or I used to go watch movies at a friend in high school who was working in a movie theater. And so we would go and watch movies after hour because we could get in for free and he could work the projector. And so I could see whatever I wanted. We just had to be there at 12:30. And so I'd always be asking, can I go out? Can I go do something? And my mom continually would be like, you have to wait until a commercial. I'm in the middle of 2020 right now. And I'd be like, it doesn't matter. It was frustrating, but I definitely got some of that parental vibe was relatable to me in retrospective, watching it now as an adult, that I got from my mom, because we definitely had a moment in this where Nanny was like, I'm watching the news right now, so let me finish watching the news. Please leave me alone. And then the kids are like, all the Muppet Babies are just like, why does she watch the news so much? It becomes like a mystery to them that they need to solve.
Well, I mean, I think they bring up some good points. It's like, yo, this is kind of boring. I mean,
this is what I think of for the Muppet Babies day. They wake up, Nanny feeds them. She seemingly then lets them, leaves them to their own devices for a couple hours.
Right. Yeah.
And then comes back with a snack. Again, leaves them to their own devices, comes back, mandatory nap time. Leaves them again to their own devices, comes back, dinner. Like lunch or, dinner within there. Like, she basically is there to serve meals. She's not parenting. She's participating in some sense, but she seems very like, I got my own shit that I'm working on now.
It's like you've read a book about this or something, because yeah, you're right. I mean, she is not parent. There's no like discipline. It's just like vague positive reinforcement and then sort of winding up the clock and letting it be.
Yeah. Which, you would think that for these kids at some point, I mean, I don't know about you, but my imagination only took me so far as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, well, I'm going to sit down and watch TV or play some video games right now.
Or like maybe read a book if I was really bored.
Yeah.
If all the batteries on my Game Gear ran out.
And the wall charger was nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Then it was something where you're like, I'm going to concentrate on this other thing.
Right.
But yeah, it's just kind of crazy. So, I mean, we have all these characters. So I want to talk about the 2 episodes that we watched for tonight. But I wanted to check and see first, are there, because I don't want to gloss over them because they're important, but I want to get to the point where we've talked about these key moments, because then I want to talk conspiracy theories about this show and questions that we have, Charlie.
That sounds great.
Yeah. All right. So the episodes that we watched tonight, let's get into it. So out of either of the 2, anyone that like jumped out at you that was really interesting?
Well, so what was the title of the news one? Because in my YouTube video, the title was cut off.
Yeah, it didn't come across for me either. It was season 5, episode 6.
So it's all about the news.
Right.
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, it was just funny. You're talking about references. There's so many references in this episode that are way over children's heads. So I think we sort of have Kermit trying to be Walter Cronkite. He's in like sort of a
Vincent Price mustache.
Right, yeah, or like someone doing an Italian stereotype.
Yeah, you're right. He's got like the little triangle stash.
He's got like, and then sort of the perfectly parted in the center, greased up hair.
God.
So I really liked that. I also really enjoyed Scooter at the end as Andy Rudy.
Yes.
So I'm a giant 60 Minutes fan, and I love how he's taking off his glasses and being exasperated, putting them back on. So all those kind of things I really enjoyed. But man, so I definitely have a feeling about like old toys, and the old toys thing just made me really sad. So I was just like, Jesus, I don't want to feel guilty for any of that.
But a big part of this show, for both episodes that we watched, seems to be this like little bit of sadness and remorse towards the end of every episode. There's always this moment, at least in the 2 episodes that we watched,
right,
where these Muppet Babies would cry, like they'd get upset about something. And I'm not saying, I mean, they're babies. I'm not saying anything regarding their age and the fact that they shouldn't cry. They should, but it really seemed noticeable, those moments. We had one moment where they couldn't find Animal,
right,
and they were upset. And we have this other moment where they're talking about some of these old toys, and they get very nostalgic. And I'm just like, how are you so nostalgic? You're like 3 years old.
Right, you don't have enough information for nostalgia.
Like, what is oh man, that bottle I used to have.
That blanket I barfed on.
Oh man, that crib. I don't know why I'm being Ralph right now. Man, that crib that I used to be in. Like, it was very interesting, and it felt very honest.
Yeah.
In those moments, and it felt very vulnerable to have these characters that we've seen on a variety show on like primetime television that are joking around and doing like comedic slapstick bits that are also puppets. Like, I mean, they're Muppets. I should not say puppets. They are Muppets that are then suddenly in this thing where they can be as vulnerable as they are, because yes, there were tender moments during the Muppet Show variety hour, but this seems like something where they're like really trying to kind of hit home on it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So anything else? I mean, from the news, I definitely had the point where Rolf kind of comes in as like the MTV DJ.
Oh, I like that.
And he's like, well, he makes a comment. He goes, we're going to show 1,000 of the top music videos. And 1,000 is a really weird way to say 1,000.
Right.
And I actually had to look it up because I was like 10,100. I actually never heard that particular phrase for some reason, and it like threw me off for like 2 seconds. But ultimately, I like the fact that they were trying to understand something that was important to Nanny, which the ultimate thing that they had for it was, well, she watches it because she's trying to understand, or she says like, I want to understand who won the big game or what the president was saying.
Right.
In this day and age, like hearing that information, I was like, oh, that must be really tiring news. Like,
right.
That must
Or
just be
I
too
was
much.
thinking, I was just like, I wrote in my notes, Nanny has a real simpleton view of the news. Wake up, sheep Muppets, in all caps. Not kidding.
Oh my God.
Or like the kids learn that she watches exclusively Fox News.
She's just like...
And just repeats it at like, it's all fact.
Oh God. That would be challenging. But then at that point, I would wonder if they would even be sad or even have the frame of reference.
Yeah, they would have no idea.
That would actually legit be a reason to have Muppets cry.
Right.
is if that was the given circumstance that they had for that setting. Yeah, Muppets should cry if they thought that was fact. Man. But it was just, I love whenever they do these spoofs, whenever they try to come to it. This moment at the end where they get so nostalgic about their toys. They have this line where they're all in their crib and they're playing with everything. And I think it's Skeeter that makes the comment, or maybe it was Rolf, but it's an exchange between the two of them where they were just like, having a good, finding and like reconnecting with a good toy is just like having a good friend. And I was like, is it? That's sort of
sad.
Like, to me, I was like, oh, that was a tearful moment that I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, I get the point that they're trying to make.
Right.
But just sort of in this adult lens watching the show, I was like,
you guys are lonely.
Oh, man. Gotta do something to pull you kids out of this funk.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen a group of, like, more diverse, depressed children. That just have free range to do whatever they want.
Right, yeah. Maybe they need a little structure.
Maybe they need a little bit of structure. But, so, anything else from this episode that we watched related to the news?
I think the musical portion. So, I mean,
Let's
every
get into the
episode has a
musical.
musical portion. So, while the main meat of the episode is a spoof on the news, the musical portion is Kermit and Fozzie as the News Brothers. So it's a Blues Brothers parody.
I love this.
Which just like, wouldn't that have been like a 10-year-old reference at that point?
Yeah.
So, and then they do a Blues Brothers style song entitled Can't Stop the News.
Yep. It was something that was it felt so unnecessary because at some point I was waiting for them to cut to live action video from the Blues Brother movie.
Right, yeah.
And because of all of these live interstitials that they throw in that are clips from movies, I really would have thought that would have been something that would have been a no-brainer for them.
You were primed to look for it.
Like, I'm just waiting for somebody just to come out and be like, I'm on a mission from God. And be like, all right, here we go. Yep. We're in this. We're doing this. They just never do it. They're like, we're going to make our own Blues Brothers Muppets references now, and we're going to commit to it. I was like, well, this is a choice.
Yeah.
You had options, and you made a choice. So congrats to you.
Yeah.
But the song I thought was really enjoyable. The song was better than the song from our other episode that we watched tonight.
Oh, yeah.
The song in our other episode was simply the word best friends seemingly repeated over and over and over again while they're in sort of a jungle-esque setting.
And they sort of have a Ladysmith Black Mambazo like backing track to it, which makes it a little bit more interesting. So they got the dope beats, but the lyrics are trash.
Yeah. It was something that when they jumped into it, because I watched this episode, which this episode was titled, the title?
Oh yeah. Raiders of the Lost Muppet.
Raiders of the Lost Muppet.
So you got one Indiana Jones reference, but then it's really Temple of Doom. They don't even touch on Raiders.
No. But the song portion of this is almost like a Jungle Book reference.
Right, yeah. Totally different.
Which it's really, really, because Charlie, you and I have both done improv for quite a while, and it's always really funny when you're either playing with somebody different that you don't normally play with, or you're playing with like a new person, and they come in with all of those really interesting sets of nostalgia and references, and then they make a comment in a scene that they think that you're going to pick up on that's a movie reference or something. And this is heavily called like reference improv. And sometimes it can be a lot of fun because if you both understand the movie and if you know it, you can explore it together. If you don't understand or pick up that they're making that reference, it can go one of two ways. I mean, it can be a lot of fun to have somebody kind of guide you through it.
Right. Or be sort of like blissfully ignorant and sort of aware from the audience's reaction. They're like, I'm sure this is something.
Right. Or it can just go horribly wrong. And like this show just has so many quick rapid fire references that it seems bananas to me. In this episode, this Raiders of the Lost Muppet in particular, there was so much almost from start to finish that like as I was like tallying and like writing down stuff, I got halfway through the episode and I was like, I'm just gonna focus.
Yeah,
because otherwise I would
track is nuts.
Otherwise I would have been pausing and continuing to write everything down every like 2 seconds. There was just so much.
Yeah.
I feel like at some point this show, especially this episode, and I think that this was even my recommended episode, I got exhausted.
Yeah, it was a pretty exhausting one. So I really enjoyed getting through the news episode, but this one I was like, man, this is 19 minutes and it feels like double the length.
Yeah. It's a challenge. I mean, it's interesting, but at the same time, the whole interesting motivation behind all of these references that they have is that they're all playing a game of tag, and everybody is hiding. It's hide and go seek, tag, and they're all returning to a home base, and they're yelling "Ollie, Ollie, oxen free," which is really fun to kind of hear.
Yeah,
and watch that.
Me of playing like neighborhood games.
Yeah, exactly. And so I loved neighborhood games. Tag, capture the flag, all that stuff was so much fun, and you see them play this, and it's really joyful. And then they get to this point where all of a sudden they don't know where Animal is, and then they all begin to panic, and they make the decision as a group to leave the nursery. Now there have been a couple references at this point as they're playing this game of tag. But then when they walk outside of this door, it's as if their imagination is just magnified exponentially. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why they're locked in the nursery. Right. It's just to prevent the imagination
their,
monsters.
Psychedelic fugue.
Oh. But they make this journey, and this is suddenly where we get all of these different movie references incorporated into everything that we're doing, especially because then we have this group of Muppet Babies. They split off into two. And it just kind of all goes downhill from there.
Yeah, we have a cameo from Molaram from Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Which is very odd / even more vaguely racist than actual Temple of Doom.
Because they really whitewashed this character.
Oh, yeah. They made him just look like a Ken doll who had been to the beach for a day.
And so if everybody's unfamiliar, this is the particular character who does the heart grab.
Who does the Kali Ma.
The Kali Ma in Temple of Doom. And so instead of... This is what's confusing. At one point, they show you the stock, like the footage of sort of the temple portion.
Right, yeah. You see sort of the skull carved out of stone.
Right. And then they kind of swing into action into the space, which is then drawn. But then instead of having the actual actor or a clip from the movie present, they actually bring in and they draw and animate this character and insert them into the world. Now, everybody at this point, is supposed to be... Actually, interesting fact, everybody that was in Temple of Doom and the language they were speaking, they were Sri Lankan.
Ah.
And so, which was different because I believe... I forget the country that they were in, but it was always a big controversy because they had Sri Lankan people playing this role that was supposed to be in a different area, presumably of Africa, or
I think it's India.
Is it India?
Temple of Doom.
Yeah, or like some type of like Southeast Asia area, and so people were upset about that, and so was kind of interesting because then when they draw these characters, they completely whitewashed all of them.
Or they just have some of them wearing masks that appear to be made of stone.
Yeah, it just looks like it would be something that would just like, man, you have really been hitting the gym today with those neck muscles. Like they are looking prime.
All of those guys were real tight.
Yeah.
It's also funny that you see Molaram's face. I mean, of course you would, but compared to Nanny, who, is never visible.
Right. So, because in addition to this character from Temple of Doom, the only other adult characters that I believe that we see the faces of are Statler and Waldorf. Who come in later episodes.
In another episode,
yeah. But you see their full faces. And, interestingly enough, they're not negative in this. They're very supportive and encouraging. So it really leaves you... We'll get into that question in a minute.
Yeah, for the conspiracy
theory portion of this. But I had two things that really jumped out at me. One, this best friend song that they sing that's in this Jungle Book setting. What key are they singing in? And can we never hear a song in that key again, ever?
Yeah.
It is unabashedly sung out of key by not only the chorus, but I think the 4 Muppet Babies that are also in there. And when I say out of key, it's as if somebody was just like, we're going to sing. Like, it's that, like, I'm going to dance like nobody's watching.
Right, yeah. Sing like everyone's deaf.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's bad. It's bad, and it really gets to the point, too, where the animation, as we talked about, the quality...
The quality of everything really dips for that segment.
Yeah, it really, really... Because there's a part where Rolf is banging on, like, some vines, kind of as a percussion instrument, and then there's, like, a close-up of him, and then it pans back to, like, a wider shot of everybody kind of dancing and singing, and the animation quality goes from, like, an okay close-up of Rolf to like a really, really poorly drawn wide shot.
They let all the animators be drunk that day.
Yeah, that must have been a good Friday for everybody. Just like, guys, we're gonna close this out and go home.
Yeah.
So let's just not worry about it. But they go through all of that. The key, and if you're listening and you're curious, go check out that song. I think it's called the Best Friend song. It is really like, it's fun and it's campy, but just if you pay attention, I had to watch it twice and really just like lend your ear to it for a second. You will hear so many people singing out of key and out of sync that it is bananas.
Yeah.
Now, the final thing that I have for this, Charlie,
okay,
and this is what's really fucked up, all right, is the punishment that they feel that they're going to incur.
Oh, yeah. I had several notes about this where I was just like, is there a secret history of domestic violence?
Yeah.
Or violence against children?
Well, do you remember what Fozzie Bear says at one point? I've written it down. So
can you remind me?
Let me share. So it says, he goes, and Nanny's going to put me in a jar of centipedes and make me do push-ups until my brain turns into toothpaste. That seems like a kind of...
And she's going to throw a bucket of piss at me.
I mean, it really... Like, it got really heavy in that moment. But,
yeah.
like, he's reacting in a way that's kind of cute and comical. But, like, watching it, I was like, this... I wanted to call child services.
Yeah, or just, like, can we do a wellness check?
Yeah, something.
Yeah, that was very worrisome. Or just, like, why would he assume that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's...
If anything, Nanny is guilty of neglect, not really abuse.
Right. Well... You know, we've talked about Nanny and we've talked about conspiracy theories revolving around this. Do you have questions that we could pose out as conspiracy theories for this show?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess, to begin with the overall premise, you mentioned Statler and Waldorf. They're nice. So are we to believe that this is some sort of multiverse situation where they just aged later?
Nice.
Did they all go on a faster than light spaceship and experience time dilation?
Oh, no.
Well, no, they would still be whatever age they left, I guess. But, like, I don't know. The timeline is very confusing, but they understand references from 1984.
Right. I think the thing that is probably the scariest for me is that why can't they... Now, in this episode, Raiders of the Lost Muppet, they do leave the nursery, but why are they never compelled to leave the nursery?
Right. Yeah, my aforementioned concern that there might have been some sort of world-ending event.
Right.
And they're just locked inside like Cloverfield.
I mean, it really kind of has sort of a hostage situation where these kids are being held. Presumably, you think maybe they're waiting for their parents, but they live in this nursery.
Right, yeah.
There are no parents coming and getting them at the end of the day, which, again, is another big question. What happened to all of these Muppets' parents?
I think Nanny murdered them.
Oh, Jesus.
They're all under the floorboard.
Oh, like Telltale Heart style.
Yeah.
She's like, don't go out in the hallway. Gonzo, your parents are out there.
Or should I say, under there?
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Prepositions are important in this. But it's so weird. And I'm always concerned because it's such a big deal. And it's become a popular thing where you don't show a specific character's face, and they call it throwing a Wilson.
Oh, a la Home Improvement.
Probably, yeah. So, God, that show. So to not show a character's face like that is throwing a Wilson. So they throw this Wilson long before throwing a Wilson was even a concept
Right.
or an idea with Nanny, which is bizarre because, as we've mentioned, you get other adults' faces in this show, but what about Nanny was either so weird? Now, I've read everything from she's a Muppet herself. She's like an adult Muppet, and they don't want to show her. I've read everything to the point of she's horribly disfigured.
Right, I was going to say like acid burns.
I've read something that somebody threw out as a conspiracy theory that it's Jim Henson in drag.
Whoa, I like that one.
And that, to me, I was like,
It's kind of a stretch.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like you're reaching with that one. But again, it's one of those things that it's so interesting. It's so different. To watch it now, there are those moments where I'm just like, I want to see her face. Like, you see, and we keep saying, like, her legs. She has these like very, very notable like
multicolored socks.
Yeah, they're like white and green striped socks with sort of this like it's like a purple and kind of like red. It's like a purple cardigan, but then like a red kind of like dress.
Yeah, or skirt or something.
Skirt, and so it's all very notable. In certain scenes, she does sit down, and you can see like her hands, and you can see like the top portion.
So like V for Vendetta, she's like pulling on a glove.
But like you see other parts of her, but you never see, like, you even see hair, I think, at one point, but you never see her face.
Huh.
That to me now is, as a kid, I would have never thought anything about it. To me now, I want to know, and I'm creeped out a little bit.
Yeah, me too. Maybe one of the animators just like did a couple frames and they'll be released upon his or her death.
Oh my God. Just like a big reveal.
Just like my father wanted the world to see Nanny's face.
Oh God.
And we'll be 80 years old and be like, oh, Nanny.
That would really be a Muppet Babies game changer.
That would be
like over 30 years after the show is on the air.
Yeah, when you can stream the episodes directly into your brain.
Oh God. Can you think of any other conspiracy theories? Any questions that you have?
No, not really.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. All right, so those are ultimately all our conspiracy theories. Guys, if you have answers,
your own.
Yeah, if you have any conspiracy theories on this, we want to hear what those conspiracy theories are. Find us on Facebook, message us, or at Morning Tunes on Twitter. We want to know. We want to get these things solved. We want to get down to the bottom of the nanny's face. We want to figure this out.
We want the truth. We're muckrakers.
Yeah, oh jeez. So these are obviously our opinions, but the internet has a bunch of other opinions.
Yeah.
And so to talk about that, we're going to jump into Love It or Hate It. And so we are going to, we've got one Love It and we've got one Hate It, which this is very weird. We've had a couple shows recently where there's been like no real like Love It or Hate It. People are just kind of like, this was a cartoon. Very, very middle of the road, very sitting on the fence for this. But Charlie's going to kick us off with our Love It Tonight.
Yeah, so this is from author Joseph the Owl, written on New Year's Eve, 2006. I hope it was earlier in that day, Joseph.
Stroke of midnight.
Yes, feeling real sad. So Joseph the Owl writes, I remember the countless afternoons watching the Muppet Babies, and it brings back some of my fondest memories. The show really taught me about the importance of imagination, which I remember my grandparents telling my mom was a word my brother and I would always use. Some bad mothering there. Like when we would build forts from couch cushions, blankets, and pillows. Like when we would play Star Wars, just like Gonzo and Kermit would. I was Gonzo. Another Gonzo fan, Sean.
Another Gonzo fan.
I remember my eager anticipation for newer episodes or ones that I hadn't seen before. It saddens me to think about a future generation that will grow up without the wonderful creativity and warmth of Jim Henson. Mic drop.
Yeah, that is good.
Same.
God, Jim Henson, what a great creator, guys. All right, so let's get into this hate it. So I read this with a heavy heart
and all of your vitriol.
Yeah, all my vitriol. So this is from Ian 1211 from West Hope, England, and this was on. Hey, it looks like same year.
Yeah.
Just the night before Halloween. So trying to
working on his costume.
I hope he went as a white and green striped sock in like a penny loafer. This is titled "Can't Stand It." This show is dreadful. I can't believe people used to watch and like this show. The idea was bad. The story was bad. The characters were bad. The thing that really annoyed me is that they took scenes from real-life movie clips and used in their cartoons to become a part of the baby's imagination. I could have been out innocently walking my dog, and some cameraman would be watching me from behind the bushes and film me in my black lab and secretly us, I'm assuming that's use as a part of the film, probably displaying us as some frightening thing that the babies run away from. The producer of this show should have been put in prison. This was a step down from Jim Henson, and is the greatest money-making scheme ever to have gotten away with, thanks to with the help of gullible viewers of the 1980s. This show should have taken into complete obscurity. 1 out of 10. I'm also going to give grammar and sentence structure for Ian 1211. I'm going to give him a 0 out of 10.
Yeah, he doesn't even deserve it.
Wow, buddy. This is bad. So these are some other opinions. So Charlie, we're going to jump now into our opinions. So, so real quick, do you recommend this or do you not recommend this? If you don't recommend this, do you give it the dip, which erases it from the annals of history for all of cartoons?
I definitely recommend it.
Okay.
I think it seems like it was very hard to miss just in my little random survey of friends and my brother. So, I think it'd be sort of a nostalgic fun thing, especially seeing the movie clips and stuff.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, I don't know why you would be watching it, but you should. I don't know why you would seek it out, but it's enjoyable enough if you don't have that kind of fan base.
Right. Oh, I agree. I recommend this as well. This was one of those shows that I remember very fondly watching when I was a kid. I'm obviously now older, and I'm willing to inject some conspiracy theories. These are all in loving fashion, and nothing is serious about this. But it's fun to watch. It's fun to see some of the things that are there. I'm not going to lie. The animation is a little bit crappy.
Yeah.
And I'll say that the songs were pretty much unnecessary.
And kind of up and down in quality.
Yeah. And but otherwise, the imagination aspect of this that we've stressed a couple times, I think is extremely important. I think it's very fun, and who would have ever thought that this could have been something that you could have taken a live action franchise like the Muppet Show and made a baby version of it. And so
an animated baby
version of this. And so I know that Dave had posited the question, can you take another franchise and baby animated version it and make it as successful? We're now towards the end of the show. Charlie, is there anything that you could think that you could take?
So this is one that hasn't been done yet, but could be.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Ooh.
There's also, you can just simply say, I have no idea.
It's really tough. I mean, the only show that's similar but not the same that comes sort of close in my mind is something like Tiny Toon Adventures.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done an episode?
We have
on
not
that?
done Tiny Toons
That would be
yet.
a good one to do. But it's a similar. I mean, that is the case where it's like the kids of
Right.
But they're like very similar to the parent, like Daffy Duck or Bugs Bunny or whatever.
Right.
That's the only thing that sort of comes close, but it's tough to think about. Maybe Baby Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Oh my
It'd
god.
be even more annoying.
It'd be even higher pitched.
Yeah.
It's funny because every time I keep thinking about stuff like this, I'm thinking about live action stuff and can you make an animated baby version of it? And we just recently watched Alf with Jamal Newman. And I don't think that Alf would be a good candidate to make a baby version, a baby animated version. It would just be a lot more of the same.
Right.
Which is unnecessary. And I keep thinking about another live action one that we've seen is Popples.
What is Popples?
Popples were these stuffed animals that were, they kind of look like little teddy bears. They look like really multicolored, fun teddy bears.
Oh, okay.
And then you'd pull, they had like a pouch that they could reach into like their hammer space and pull out any item. But there was a lot of song that was in that. But it eventually became an animated series. They were used to sell greeting cards,
Gotcha.
from like a greeting card company. But it was something that it has an animated version. To make it an animated younger version of it, it just doesn't make sense. I can't think of a single thing that we could take and make a baby version of it. I will throw this out there because I know Dave will enjoy this, but I think maybe Baby Centurions. I think Baby Centurions of sort of like the life and times of Ace McCloud and all of the rest of the group just kind of coming up and coming into their own in terms of the military. I think that'd be fun to see a baby version of that. So, but I think that's it. So
what about Baby Starship Troopers, the animated series?
Oh my god, I would watch that. I would watch the hell out of that.
Just brutal military, like fascist military.
I would like to know more.
Yeah. Well, we should pitch this off air. I don't want to say too much more.
Exactly. Or do we do it now and then we just say copyright TM?
I'm gonna sue you.
Yeah, right. But thank you, Charlie, so much for coming back on the show.
Always
absolutely,
fun to be on.
It's great to have you. Where can the good folks find you online, and what do you have coming up in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, so you can find me at my website. You can see paintings and stuff at visconage.com, visconage.com. Sorry, all my relatives scooped you on that URL. Or you can find me on Instagram at CA Visconage, same spelling of the last name. Right now, locally, if you're in the DMV area, I'm in an art show at the DC Art Center from now when this is released until September 15th. So check them out there. And more shows to be announced later this fall, but I don't have anything concrete to report.
No problem. And we will have all this information up on the website. As for me, guys, I do live improv comedy in Washington, D.C. with a group that's called Nox. That's NOX ! We perform with Washington Improv Theater, and we've got a whole bunch of runs of shows. You can find tickets and times witdc.org. And as always, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Paul Ellis. Well, that is going to wrap up everything for us this week. If you want to get in touch with us and drop us an email, you can do so. SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. Check out our website, www.SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. You can also keep the conversation going on Facebook by searching Saturday Morning Cartoons. Remember, that's morning with a U. And you can follow us on Twitter at MorningTunes. You can also check out my handiwork on Instagram, Saturday Morning Cartoons on IG. Next week, we have some things that are coming up that are obviously going to be cartoon related. So if you want to know more about this in advance, you can go over to our Patreon page and you can support us there. By supporting our Patreon, it helps the show. And we pre-release our schedule that we have for the upcoming month so that you can know what cartoons we're going to be doing in advance. So you can check that out, patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons. Guys, thank you so much to Charlie Visconage for coming on again. We will see you again next week. Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.